This video is brought to you by the generous donations from viewers like you. Hi everyone, this is CricketSong with Lunar Wisdom, and in this video I want to talk about my matron. I had a viewer subscriber send me a message, and in the message they explained how they were looking through my videos and watching some of the older videos, and they noticed that at one time my matron was Bast, but now my matron is Isis. And they were curious as to how this transformation happened, or how I went from Bast to Isis. And I figured I would share this experience with you and the things that led up to the shift. So when I first started actually practicing my chosen spiritual path, my Wiccan spiritual path, I had come to honor and respect, or I was working with Bast, and that came up during a meditative experience I had. At the time, I had been studying, but was not able to actually practice any sort of ritual or any sort of anything, because I had moved in with my parents and my two children. My children and I moved in with my two parents. And my parents are practicing Roman Catholics and did not want me practicing anything witchy while I lived with them. And the children and I lived with them for about 6 months. Prior to that, prior to moving in with them, I was living with my second husband, and I had gone through some personal changes. I had been a Jehovah's Witness, and I had left the Watchtower organization and had begun transitioning into a more pagan or Wiccan path. And at the time, I had just become interested. I started doing some research, and during the 6 months that I was living with my parents, I would just actively read and gain some book knowledge, as well as just the basic feelings and connecting with the elements, because that's something that I could do, and it wasn't really considered witchy by my parents. So at the time I didn't have an altar, and I was just, meditating, praying, and connecting with the elements and coming to understand how I viewed deity. Now, it was during that time and during my meditations that I had received images and visions of Bast. So during my research and during all this gathering information, I had done more particular research on the goddess Bast. When I moved into my apartment with the children, I set up my first altar, and I had a small little statue of Bast that I put there, and I started doing ritual and really working with Bast and her characteristics and what she offered me. And at the time, she offered me protection, and she was definitely a mother image for me, sort of that fierce like mother energy. She was about motherhood, and my children at the time were 2 and 6, 5 or 6. Yeah, I think that's about, my daughter was 2 or under, and my son was kindergarten age. I was on my own. I had just come out of a pretty nasty divorce, and really was benefited from working with the goddess Bast at that time. So I worked with her for years. As things began to settle in my personal life, as I grew more and became more comfortable with the Wiccan path, as I became more of a teacher, a mentor, and really began seeking more knowledge of deeper understandings and magical practices, I had gotten a reading, a card reading. I don't believe it was a tarot reading, but I had just started working at the metaphysical store that I work at now, and I had gotten a card reading from one of the readers there. And as she's doing this reading for me, because we exchanged readings at the time, she talked to me about a goddess coming into my life. And at that point, I was still working with Bast, but felt as if there was a transition going on. I mean, there was a transition going on in my personal life. I think at that time I had just gotten married. I think I had just gotten married to my now husband, and was really more involved in my practice. So I could feel the energy shifting. And even up to this point, I didn't even have a patron at this point. I was just working with Bast. So this reader had said, there's this image coming to me. I think Isis is calling you. I think she wants you to work with her. And I was like, no, I'm not going to work with Isis, because Isis, at that time, I viewed her as someone that everybody worked with. Isis. I mean, it was Hecate and Isis and all the Greek, the Greek goddesses, Diana and Artemis, and I was not. If I was going to switch to and work with another goddess, it was going to be someone more obscure, more unique, and not someone that everybody worked with. That was the attitude I had. So I was like, no, Isis is not calling me, you're mistaken. And I found that as I started doing meditations, I was getting visions of wings. I was getting visions of snakes. I was getting visions of the caduceus, the rod with the snakes coming, going around them. These images, at first, the wings, I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's not Isis. And then when I got the images of the snakes, I'm like, see, it's not Isis. Snakes and wings are not Isis. Wings may be Isis, but snakes and wings are not a sign of Isis. She is not calling me. So I was convinced that it was another goddess. So I started doing research online looking for goddesses that are associated with snakes and wings. And of course, Isis would pop up with the wings. And then I came face to face with a pendant that had snakes and wings. I'll have to insert an image of it here. Snakes and wings, sure enough, it was Isis. And she was definitely calling me. So I began to do research and look in her mythology, and I realized that Isis was the goddess that I was meant to work with at that point. That everything that I was focused on, everything that I was working with, not only in my magical practice, but in my personal life, really would benefit from the energy and the characteristics and the strength that Isis had to offer me. Her lessons, her teachings were something that was definitely in alignment with what I was trying to accomplish and work through in my life. So since then, I've been working with Isis. She called and I responded. She had to get through a lot of resistance though, but she was definitely persistent. So that is how I transferred, or I moved from working with Bast to Isis. I hope you found that helpful. And as always, I love you. Mwah.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with others on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. This way you won't miss any of my newly uploaded videos. And be sure you've connected with me on Facebook, either through my CricketSong fan page, Lunar Wisdom business page, or by joining the Sacred Circle.